Greg Hawk here. I'm here to tell you a little bit about the lost Dutchman and the lost two soldiers mine. I've just been prospecting for 6 weeks down in Mexico when I came back up to Mesa, Arizona to work on a project. And a friend of mine called me. He said this old guy he knew swears he knew where the lost Dutchman mine was. And so I made arrangements to go up and see him up in Strawberry, Arizona, and went up there and he started telling me this story. He says he thought it was a lost Dutchman because there was a ranch house over in Milk Ranch Creek that this couple lived at, and they actually raised goats and they made cheese and they sold it over to Silver King Mine. And this fellow also drove a supply wagon back and forth to town for him. So one day she'd come out of the house and she noticed Jacob Waltz, the Dutchman, actually out there getting water out of the well, and she knew who it was, so she just waved and went on. So that's one little segment of the story, and the old man believed, led to believe that he knew where it was. The other part was one time that Waltz and his partner Weezer went up to town and come back with supplies, and they looked down from like a ridge or whatever and saw two what they thought were Indians down at the mine. They shot them, and they come to find out there were a couple of Mexican fellows, and they thought maybe they're part of the Peraltas. The Spanish family had been up there mining, and they felt bad about it, I guess. Anyway, this where he thinks this mine was is below this mountaintop, so he thinks that they shot down at this mine shaft. So, and the other part of the story was the lost two soldiers mine, and we have to keep some dates in mind here. The Dutchman died in 1891 due to a flood, and there was an old lady that kind of took care of him the last few days of his life. He took pneumonia probably and he died, and he told her where the mine was and probably gave her a little map. Well, for a second, let's look back here at 1880. These two soldiers got out of the Army, mustered out of the Army, and to go over and work at the Silver King Mine, because at that time they could make a lot more money over at the Silver King Mine. So they mustered out of the Army at Fort McDowell, which is up on the Verde River north of Phoenix, and they decided to just walk over. They knew the country pretty well. They were in the cavalry there, and they'd been over most of that area. So they started walking, and I figured I looked at the map, and they probably walked straight south on the Verde River, crossed over the Salt River, and then went probably over Usery Pass and just hugged the mountains. They weren't going to walk through the mountains with them old leather boots on. So I just think they kind of skirted the mountains so they come out to around Goldfield. And then they thought probably went a little bit farther south before going to the mountains yet, and went east. And I think they probably ended up over somewhere around Barkley Basin before they started going through the mountains. So it would be my guess is between Barkley Basin and then where I'm going to tell you is where they probably run into that shaft. They walked through the mountains there and found some gold ore at some shaft or mine, and they took it with them. They took a few bags of it with them, and when they got to the Silver King Mine, they looked for the mine superintendent, see if they could get on for a job, and the mine superintendent said, yeah, I'll come back in the morning, I'll put you on. Well, they said, we got this ore, we found this old mine back in the mountains. If you wouldn't mind assaying it, we'd appreciate it. Well, he said, sure, we'll have it assayed for you. I'll tell you in the morning. Well, the next morning he got there, and the mine superintendent called him over and said, hey, that gold you guys brought in, or ore you brought in, had $800 worth of gold in it. And he says, if I was you, I'd go back there and lay claim on it and start mining it instead of working here. And they asked the superintendent to go with him. And he said, well, you go back there and lay a claim to bring some more ore in here. You bet, I'll go back with you. Well, they said, well, let's leave 400 in the company safe, and we'll take 400 with us. So when we come back, we'll have some money here. I said, all right. So they went to town and to Apache Junction, and they loaded up on supplies and whatever and get ready to go in the mountains to stake their claim. Well, they probably got a little loose lip that night after drinking a bit. Probably let out a few little things like, well, they found this mine that had a lot of gold, they had a map to it, and they were heading back out there to lay claim on it. Well, they left out the next morning, and a couple weeks later, somebody riding through there found the body of one of them, so they called the sheriff out there, and then they ended up finding the body of the other guy, and they buried him out there. Well, come to be known that some guy that was mopping the floors in the saloon, had a club foot, was over in another town gambling quite a bit, drinking pretty heavily. He didn't have that kind of money. So the sheriff was wanting to talk to him. Well, the guy disappeared. They never was able to talk to him, never figured out who killed them 2 soldiers, even though they had a pretty good idea. Well, years later, a guy showed up in Apache Junction, and he was asking, he says, anybody around here really know this country really well? And this guy said, yeah, you know, old Sam Zeeley, who used to be a newspaper editor back east, came out here, and him and Jim Bark on Bark Ranch, they got together and they started looking for that lost Dutchman after 1891, and they know all this country like the back of your hand. He said, if I was going to talk to anybody, it'd be one of those 2, you know. So this guy said, all right. So he looked up Sam Zeeley, and he told him, you know, listen, I'm looking for a green spring. And he says, somewhere in the mountains, and a natural bridge, kind of a hole in the rock. Do you know where a green spring is? And Sam Zeeley kind of scratched his head and said, well, the only green spring I know is one in the summertime when the moss kind of grows over it. The guy said, well, I don't think that's it. But anyway, he had this map about half unfolded, and it showed a green spring that had like a natural bridge or a hole in the rock. And the guy said, well, I'll just see what I can do. And he left. And before he left, Sam Zeeley asked, well, where'd you get that map? And he says, well, up in the Alaska Goldfield, the guy I was working with had a club foot, and he said, he gave me this map, he told me to come down here. He said, this mine shaft or whatever it is really rich in gold. And I asked him to come along, and he said, no, he couldn't come back down here. He just, you know, his club foot gave me too much problem, and he didn't want to come back down here. So anyway, he gave me the map and said, if I found something, maybe, you know, send him a few bucks out of it. So that's the way kind of the story went. Well, John, he told me the story. He says, I kind of got an idea where that hole in the rock was and stuff, but so I started searching for the green spring, and I went up, not Millside Canyon. He thinks that's where the hole in the rock is. There is a hole in the rock. It's a natural bridge about 10 foot around. But he went up the other canyon, Hewitt Canyon, on the east side of Millside Canyon, and he started searching for a green spring, kind of in line with that hole in the rock on the other side over Millside. Anyway, he said he told me he found the green spring. He said it bubbled up and it went right back in the ground. It wasn't very big. So then it went over the ridge into Millside, and there was the natural bridge. So up on a ledge, kind of a flat spot below the top of the mountain there, he believed was where the shaft was. And you can see the natural bridge over here, and here's a flat spot. And he said, I found a tree there, it shouldn't have been there, and I pulled it out. And it looked like it was really loose soil, so I think the Indians covered it back over. And there was a kind of a flat outcropping, had charcoal against it. And he says, I think the Spanish at one time were mining here and had smelters, and that's where the charcoal come from. So he had a very convincing story. He said he had been up there trying to open up himself, but he had knee problems. He couldn't go back up again. So, you know, he never did get it opened up. And he'd talked to other people into it, but nobody seemed to be successful. So I said, all right, I'll go up and have a look at it. And he told me where there was a seep and a rock cut between there and over to the big natural bridge, a big hole in the rock, which you can see if you come in from Southway into Millside. And so I looked, and I did find the seep. It's back behind a lot of green bushes and undercut, and initials are carved in there, and the old man's initials was carved in there. And I also found a pottery shard. So I knew the Indians knew about that seep. So I went up there and looked. I found the area he's talking about, and I got my dad and brother involved. And we got a helicopter, and we flew up there and set up camp for 6 weeks and prospected up there and see if we could find anything. We never found anything. But we had to watch it real closely because it's wilderness area one way and Forest Service on the other side, so we had to make sure it was on the Forest Service side and get a permit. What made the line actually is called a hydrographic divide, and if the water flows this way off the slope, off the peak, you're in wilderness. If it flows this way, you're in Forest Service. So that's how we determined where we were good, that we weren't in a wilderness area. And we spent 6 weeks up there, and I found like a little mule shoe hiking up there one time, and I also found that there was some barbed wire fence in a low area between Millside and going over to Muskog, and also a rock fence up and down the slope as I come into mill site. One time I seen this rock fence built up there. So I think, well, gee, they must have been running cattle in here. So a little research after we got off there, I found out there was a rancher running 6,000 to 10,000 head of cattle back in there. And it was probably, I'm thinking that some of these cowboys got up to the top up there and camped out, had a campfire against that rock, and one of them threw a mule or burro through a shoe up there, and that's where that came from. So that was never the place, you know. We spent time there, and it was beautiful up there, and it was January, February, and it got pretty nippy up there and windy at times. So that's kind of the Lost Two Soldiers part of it, and it's definitely not the Lost Dutchman or the Two Soldiers. I still think that Two Soldiers is between Barkley Basin and probably where the hole in the rock is on Mill Site. Well, today I'm going to take you out here, and we're going to come in from the north side of Mill Site Canyon, four-wheel drive in, and do it as far as we can, and then we'll hike in. I went to the south side here a couple years ago. It was so rough, the rocks is bad. I just turned around and left. But if you go on the south side, there's a grassy area as you first come into Mill Site, and in that grassy area is full of rattlesnakes. I mean, some good sized ones. You get back in the canyon a little further, and you run into javelinas, and they pretty well clean up the rattlesnakes. You don't have to worry too much about it. Well, we're going to go on the north end, so if I can't hike back in, I'll take you to Rattlesnake Spring, and I'll take a couple shots up that area in there. You kind of give an idea how rough a country this is. Then I'll take you around through Queen Valley, and we'll go up to Elephant Butte, and I'll see if I can't get back around. I may have to hike in from some of these other springs. Okay, let's take a look at the map. Here's Barkley Basin. That's where I think the soldiers ended up going without getting into the mountains, and from there on, I think they possibly cut across the mountains. They knew them pretty well, and ended up over to the Silver King Mine, which is a little bit north of Superior, Arizona. Silver King Mine was a big silver mine. Okay, that was in 1880. All right, so today we're going to go down Highway 60 coming out of Apache Junction, going to Superior, turn off towards Queen Valley till we get off on this gravel road, Hewitt Station Road, go back, turn off on a Hewitt Canyon Road, okay? And we'll go all the way up till we come back into the north end of Mill Site Canyon, and we'll hike into Rattlesnake Spring. I'll show you the area up there we camped at. You can come from the south way, like I said, but it's pretty rocky. And we could hike in from Peacock Spring to get over to show you Milk Ranch Creek, which we may do. And another real prominent area is Buzzard's Roost right there. But then we'll come back around. I'm going to bring you back to Queen Valley. We'll go out to Elephant Butte Road and go out, and I'll show you Elephant Butte. That's a pretty neat rock formation right here, okay? And see if we can't make it back this way. All right, that's kind of the game plan. So let's go ahead and head on out and do a little four-wheel and a little hiking. We've come back about 5 miles. We'll get ready to do our turn off here. Here's a sign right here. Woodbury Trailhead, 11 miles, Rogers. We're going to turn left right here and go across Queen Creek real quick and head on back into Hewitt Canyon. So I do a little panoramic shot as we come back in here into the mountains. It's really beautiful back in here. I think we're going to head on back up Hewitt Canyon. And we're heading down, and we have to come to a Y. We take a left Then we'll take another left down our way as we head back up into Millside Canyon. Here we're going up. You see it's starting to get a little rougher up here. There's not much vehicular traffic up here. Not very many people come back in here. I thought I'd just give you kind of a few shots here so we continue back. Okay, I just pulled off here. I'm backing as far as I can go towards Millside Canyon. And I have to park. I'm going to have to hike in the rest of the way. There's a sign saying only hiking horses or bikes, no motorized vehicles. So it's probably about 1.2 miles or so back to Rattlesnake Springs. That's where we're going. So I'm going to hike on back there and I'll show you some stuff back there. All right, we're on our way. We're still about a tenth of a mile or so from Rattlesnake Spring. I thought I'd give you a kind of a panoramic. The country starting to get pretty tough back here. A lot of rocks. We're right down in Millside Canyon. And a big peak to your left. You go over to the other side of that, you'll be over on Hewitt Canyon. So this is kind of the ridge line that separates the two. All right, we're going on down to the spring, and I'll take a shot when we get down there. Okay, I'm close to where the Rattlesnake Spring used to be, but it looks like it's had quite a bit of water come through here, probably some flash floods, and pretty much covered it up. But you can see how green it is along here, so it's got to be seeping through here somewhere. At one time, there used to be a watering trough down here that the water went into, and that way they had water for their cattle. They were running back here in the early 1900s. That they were raising for the U.S. Cavalry and Army at that time. So we're going to go have another look up these mountains to the west here a little bit, and I want to show you something else. We just hiked up from down below where the spring was. We'll do a panoramic here. You see, hopefully you can see that little bit of a natural bridge over there in the rock. Okay, that's one outcropping up here. If you're going around and you look up those two kind of dome peaks up there, to the left you'll see kind of a light brown rock. Well, if you turn 90 degrees, there's like a 10-foot round natural bridge right through that brown rock if you went on around. We were camped right below where that second big dome is, down to about probably a couple hundred yards, right where that light brown band is. That's where we were camped. Right below that, there's a flat spot. And we were camped there for 6 weeks prospecting. Okay, we just made it out. Thought I'd tell you, sorry I couldn't find that big window for you, couldn't get a shot of it, but if you hike in from the south side of Millside and come in and keep watch, you'll see that big window rock up there. It's got a 10-foot around diameter cutout in it, and it's pretty easy to see. And like I said, on the far side of it, we had a camp up there for about 6 weeks, and there's also a little seep under a rock up there. But anyway, our next stop is going to be over in Queen Valley. We're going to go out to Elephant Butte, and I'll take you out that way. So see if we can get back out here. It's a pretty rough road coming in here, and it's a good thing I had short wheelbase and narrow and four-wheel drive I could lock in, but there's a couple places that was pretty gnarly. So anyway, if you come back this way, make sure you're geared up right and bring somebody with you. Okay? Well, see you over there. Here's a couple of shots I've taken probably 20 years ago when I was up here camped out. You see the hole in the rock over there we're talking about, kind of a flat spot where we were camped. Like I say, it's pretty rough country up here. That's a better shot. And this is my tent when I camped up here the last time, quite a few years ago. And looking down the valley. Now we're heading into Queen Valley now. we got to take a right at the stop sign as we're heading on back to Elephant Butte. We'll go to the end of the street here and we're going to make a left. And this will take us on down to another stop sign. We'll have to go on through it and start on a gravel road. This will be Elephant Butte Road as we go on back here. As we go back this gravel road, there are people live back here, so it's fairly well traveled. And this road actually runs right along the edge of the golf course for a while, so just watch out for golf carts when you come back here. And we're going to head on back to Elephant Butte. And here we go. I just stopped here. That's Elephant Butte Rock. You can kind of have a look at there. It looks a little bit like an elephant. That's an elephant head there and a trunk down in front of it. Okay. We drive on around. I'm going to take a couple more shots, and it really stands out now. There you go. You can really get a good shot there. Well, you can see I got this far. And 20 years ago I was here. There's no fencing up here at all. Now they got fence across it. State land, no trespassing, enter only with written permission. We'll have to hike in from Peacock Springs so I can show you Milk Ranch Creek. Yeah, that'd be Milk Ranch Creek down there in the bottom. And it works its way around, on up. See those cliffs up there? You climb over the top of them. If you go up, there's a way to get up there. And on the other side of the mountain is Millside Canyon. Okay? So there's a way to hike around there to get over there. I've done it. And if we sweep over here, you're going to see Buzzard's Roost. It's a very prominent point out here. Okay? So, like I said, this is Milk Ranch Creek, and that's where that couple had their stone house at one time, and they raised goats for cheese. They sold over to Silver King Mines. Anyway, I just thought I'd bring it back here and show you some of this country. It's pretty rough. If you get a chance, go to our website, check out our treasure blog and other videos you may like to watch. Thank you.